This is an interesting debate. Indie, going indie. Matter of fact, this thing's still on. Yeah, but going indie versus major and what it makes sense to do. You know? So it's like Jermaine Dupri tapped in on this topic recently, with his commentary and his opinion on it all. And I just wanted to tap in with my opinion on it all. So Jermaine Dupri, right? Jermaine Dupri is a legendary hip hop and R&B producer. He taps in and he says, I'm a little lost. Can somebody tell me what the goal of being an independent artist is today? Because all of the things that people are chasing is shit major artists do. What's the thing that indie artists do that make it special? And Steve Stout, who is the owner and operator of United Masters, the digital distributor, taps in and he says ownership, control, freedom, all the things that have been taken from artists since the beginning of time. And I mean, knowing what I know of United Masters, I find that really interesting, but that's a side note, right? The main thing here is the benefit of going indie versus the majors. Now, the thing that I hear most of the time from artists that are indie is that they want to make a living off of their music. That's like the number one thing. I want to make a living off of my music, meaning I want to make enough money to be able to live off of making music. Now, when an artist signs a record deal, they are employed to make music. That's effectively what happens. They're employed to make music. The record company is paying them to make music. And when an artist goes indie, they're effectively a small business owner. They're a small business owner. And they have to pay themselves. So all of the financial risk and all of the financial burden falls upon the artist's shoulders when they go indie. Versus if they were signed to a major, it's like working at a restaurant or something like that. It's the restaurant's responsibility and job to bring customers to the restaurant, to make sure that the restaurant functions to the degree that it needs to function in order to make money. That's their job. Your job is you show up and you wait tables. And that's like the similar thing to a recording contract. You get signed to a deal, you show up, you record songs, you go and you show up at your interviews, you do the things that the record company needs you to do to promote the record. And that is one of the big separators between the two. Now, the other aspect of this is the whole thing with investment. So a small business needs startup capital because you need to be able to pay for recordings. You need to be able to get records mixed and mastered. You need cover artwork, music videos, marketing, promotion, all of these different things. And the stuff that comes with marketing promotion, you got stylists, clothes, photography, all of these different things, makeup, a lot comes with creating the personas and the imagery that allows people to become fans of artists. And artists, 9 times out of 10, ain't got the money that it takes to put together the type of presentation that allows fans to have the kind of perception of them that they would want them to have. Now, some do, because some have more of a common man type of persona where it's like, hey, I'm presenting myself as a struggling broke artist, right? And it's like, well, if that's what you are and you're presenting yourself as what you are, then, it might not take that much to basically visually represent that. But for a lot of artists out there, they are trying to project a persona that takes some type of investment, especially people who have a character in their head that they want to showcase to the world. It takes some doing to do that. And record companies invest in talent. They take their money and they invest it in artists based on potential, what they think an artist can do, what they think an artist can achieve, how much money they think an artist can make, potentially. Now, most times, artists do not fulfill that potential, and the record companies take the hit. So whatever they invested in that artist, they don't get back. They lose money because the artist did not recoup what they invested in them to make them be successful. Now, an independent artist, if you go out and you go get a business loan or you max out your credit cards or whatever have you, you assume the risk. And if your album flops or your album doesn't generate the number of streams that you needed to generate in order for you to make a living or make back what you invested in, then you got to deal with the debt. You got to deal with the fees. You got to deal with the interest. You got to deal with all of those things yourself. And record company debt and real life debt are two completely different things. So record company debt, an artist signs a record deal. They owe that money back in royalties. So you sell a record, the record company takes a percentage of every sale of that record, and your percentage of the record is what, or your percentage of the sale is what you're paying back the loan based on. It is not connected to your real life debt, right? Like, you know how if you go to get a house, they're gonna have an underwriter look into your finances and see your debt to income ratio. Record company stuff does not factor into that. You're not gonna have somebody try to foreclose on your home because of record company debt. You're not gonna have, your credit score plummet because of what you owe a record company. So it's like almost like an isolated thing. And the artist owes that money in royalties, and the way that you're going to pay it back is to make more albums. And if you leave and go to another record company, then you have to pay that record company and the record company you left, right? I believe it's called cross-collateralization or something to that effect. So the way the debt works is completely different. Now, people talk about the ownership aspect of it, but it's like ownership, control, freedom. It's like, all right, freedom to do what? Be broke, struggle, So it's like, yeah, if an artist has a business where the artist has the money, and they have the capital and they have the resources to set themselves up to do all of the things that is necessary for them to do to be successful as musicians, then it works. It works great if you can do it all yourself. But if you are in a position where you don't have the startup money, you don't have the funds, you don't have any of that stuff, then you need an investor. And that is what record companies are. They're investors, employers, investors. They pump the money in to help an artist do all of the things that they need to do with their music to make something of it. And then on top of that, when an artist doesn't have a record deal, they have no advocate. So record companies have all of the most powerful artists underneath their belt because they're the ones with the investment funds to make these artists megastars. So the artists that are megastars that have all of the negotiating power are signed to record deals, like all of them under one umbrella. So it's almost like a union to some effect. So when the record companies come to the negotiating table with a Spotify or with an Apple Music or whatever have you, they come to the negotiating table with the power of all of those megastars that they represent. from Taylor Swift to Madonna to Kendrick Lamar to Drake to all of these different artists. They are negotiating on behalf of all of them. And they are saying to Spotify and whatever platform wants to license their music, hey, if you don't do what we want you to do, you can't have any of these guys' music. We will walk away and you'll lose access to it all. Like they tried to do with TikTok when they wanted to strong arm them into a better deal. We will take our artists and we will go. Now, indie artists is just you. So now it's almost like, you're all alone. And music is valuable as a collective. There is no individual piece of music, there's no individual song or album or artist that a platform can say will make or break them, because there's so many other artists out there. So if somebody has Taylor Swift's music and Kendrick Lamar's music, if Drake said, hey, you can't have my music, platform would be like, okay, cool. Because at the end of the day, they know the popularity of the platform, as long as they have most of what everybody wants, they'll be okay. So as an indie artist, without an advocate, you're left negotiating by yourself. And we kind of see how that plays out when we look at what's happening with digital distributors and what's happening with the streaming platforms with indie artists. Like, you look at these rules that they pass, right? Like, you look at these rules that they pass where they say, you look at these rules that they pass where they say, hold on, I just looked at something. Yeah, so my nose is kind of running a little bit, right? But yeah, man, it's like you look at the rules that these digital distributors pass where they're like, they effectively do what they want. So Spotify comes out and they say, hey, we're not going to pay artists that get below X amount of streams. And what can you do? You can do nothing, because at the end of the day, it's just you, your voice alone. And they know that. So they can pass any rule that they want to impact independent artists, because there's no collective bargaining. There's no collective negotiation. There is dealing with individual artists on their own, isolated. Now, indie label unions under Merlin have negotiating power. Merlin operates like record companies do. All of the indie labels that they represent, they negotiate on their behalf. So as an indie label, you might have some power, but that's still like a record company, right? That's still a recording contract. That's artists signed to an indie label. So you still have a label deal. It's not an individual artist that has power. So when it comes to individual artists, there is no union. Like backup singers and stuff like that have unions, but recording artists don't really have a union, So we're on our own, and it's hard to get a union because of the fact that everybody kind of operates from the standpoint of, if I'm doing great, great, and people are okay with you getting less for them to get more. That's, again, going back to the Spotify thing with the streaming, where they saying, hey, we're going to take from everybody that gets less than 1,000 streams, and we're going to give it to the people that make more, or the artists that get more than 1,000 streams. And those artists say, that's right, we should get that money. We are more valuable. We are more relevant, right? And the unions work out deals where maybe the people at the top don't get so much, so everybody gets something. That's that's how unions tend to operate. Like if you look at the NBA and the NBA's union, they agree to these salary caps and stuff like that. So it's like everybody can get something. And because everybody's getting something, then the biggest players like LeBron James and all of them don't get as much as they could get, because those guys could command like 600 million, whatever, right? For the amount of revenue that they generate for the team. But if the team was paying them that much money, there wouldn't be much else left to pay all the other players, and everybody else would be getting minimum deals and stuff like that. So everybody has to say, okay, I'll take less so other players can get more. And that is not something that you see in music. People are like, more egotistical about stuff. I've accomplished this. I've done that. I deserve to be paid this. And I don't care about anybody else and what they're able to make. So that's why it's hard for recording artists to get a union. But yeah, we negotiate on our own, so we have less power. And artists with record deals have the record companies advocating on their behalf as a collective. But those are like the main things. Those are the main things. It's the investment. It's the investment in talent. It's the resources that they extend to artists. So it's like what artists don't like a lot of times is what happens after the fact. That's like the issue. What happens after the fact? So you have artists that sign these deals. They sign these deals. They get money up front. So they get advances. The record company advances the money. And what they have to do is recoup what the record company advanced them. Now, if the record company feels like there's great potential in the artist, then they'll continue to invest in the artist. Now, mind you, the artist just got the advance. They got what they got up front. So if a record company, and the advance a lot of times is based on potential, what they think the artist could do. So if they see, like if they sign an artist that's like, they feel like it's like the next Justin Bieber, then they might give that artist a lot of money. If they feel like the artist is like an underground hip hop act, then they might only want to give them a small amount of money. Now, if the artist releases a song and the song starts to bubble, then the record company sees positive signs and they invest more money in the artist. But they don't put that money in the artist's pocket. They invest it in helping the artist grow the value of the asset, which is the music. So the record company give an artist $1 million advance, but then they go and spend $20 million on marketing, promotion, music videos, radio promotion campaigns, buying #1 slots on charts and stuff like that to help promote a persona and make people think that the artist is a thing and turn that artist into a megastar. So then the artist becomes a megastar. But now they're in the hole $20-30 million when they only got $1 million up front. And they don't see any revenue off of the album until they pay back the $20 million that the record company spent to make them a megastar. Now the artist is looking at it and they saying, well, now I'm not making any money off of the records that I'm selling. And that is unfair. But they disregard the fact that they're making $100 million from touring and concerts and merch and making appearances and charging people for features and all of these different things that are the product of the megastardom that they earned from the investment and the resources and stuff that was extended to them by the record company. So it's like it's a disassociation that goes on to say all of these things that I have outside of this record deal, I'm not associating with the fact that I had this record deal. I'm only looking at the record deal from the perspective of what I'm getting off of the record. But it far exceeds that because they don't just invest in the record, right? Like that's like how you had back in the days, you had what you call distribution deals like Koch Records and Coal Mine Records, where these companies sign distribution deals where it's like, we might advance you on what we feel like the record is going to sell, but their job wasn't to market and promote and help you become a star or nothing like that. That was completely on you. All they did was put your music in stores. So they will put your music in stores and they might work with the stores to like set up displays and stuff like that. And sometimes they would promote and market, but it wasn't an obligation of theirs to do it. They just had an interest because they saw some of the profit from it too. But the artists under those types of deals, didn't become stars. So those artists, they basically live hand to mouth. If they sell a record, they make some money. If they don't sell a record, they don't make any money, Whereas a lot of those artists that signed to Universal and all this other stuff, they, if you look at a lot of them, they got these deals, they got advances. The record company put out the record. They still owe the record company money because they didn't make back what the record company invested in them. But then it's like they got a name. So because they got a name, then they go and they get a role on the TV show. Or, they do their Instagram thing and become fluent influencers and make a whole bunch of money off of the name that they got. They go and do a podcast. They go and host on a radio show. They go and do all of these different things based on their name because now they got a brand and they can take that brand and the value of that brand and exploit it in a number of areas. That's like I saw the rapper Chameleon there talking about investing in tech and these deals that came his way. And it's like, at the same time, he's talking about how record companies are so predatory and abusive and how artists need to not sign deals and stuff. But it's like, I'm like, yeah, sometimes that's the case because it's all a matter of what you negotiate. You get what you negotiate. But at the same time, it's like those tech dudes wouldn't have wanted nothing to do with him had he not been the chameleonaire that the investments and the resources that the record company made in him made his name, right? It's like that's what built the brand. So it's like you have a song, but it's like how do people hear that song? How do people know it exists? How do people know you exist? That's the challenge. And the thing that we got to take into consideration is the fact that when it comes to these digital distribution companies, when it comes to these digital distribution companies, these guys exist. These guys exist to exploit artists for the most part. They are service providers. They're service providers, right? They're not partners. They don't share in your success a lot of times. You pay them money, they provide you with a service. That's how it works. You pay them money, they provide you with a service. And their service depends on artists valuing being independent, And a lot of times they have things in their terms of agreement that work like record companies, like exploit you and take advantage of you and stuff like that. And then when you look at things like where they say, oh, we give you an advance, the advances are abusive because they're charging you interest that are worse than credit cards. They're charging you origination fees. They're charging you early termination fees. They just word it different. And the way that they charge you looks different because they call it different names, but it's the same damn thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not all that much of a better system, right? And we have DJ Royalty, right? And he said, I'll take Ish, a Zio enabler would say for 200. Yeah, and I think that is ridiculous because what people have is what artists want to do, right? Is they want to demonize the people that have been identified as demons, right? And the reality of the situation is in every circumstance, every business, you have good people and you have bad people. You have good and you have evil, right? Nothing is inherently evil. And the same artists that will be like, oh, the record companies are abusive and the record companies take advantage of artists and, oh man, Gift, why are you trying to make it sound as if they're not as evil as they are? These are the same artists that are abusive to the people that they work with. They're abusive to the marketers they work with. They're abusive to the people that they get beats from, if they could squeeze these people and get these people to get them beats for free and not pay them a damn dime, they would do it. If they could get marketers to work and advertise and promote for them and not pay them a damn dime, they would do it, right? So it's like the artists a lot of times will be abusive to other people, even to the sense when I was talking about with the streaming, where you got all of these artists that get over 1,000 streams that are advocating for Spotify because all of that money goes to them versus the artists getting robbed where their money's getting taken and shuffled up. So it's like a lot of times, man, and not to say that all artists are like this, but a lot of times, man, artists be hypocrites with that whole thing. It's like they want to, when it's impacting them, they're like, oh, this is wrong. How can this be happening? But when it benefits them, they're like, hey, and try to ration out. I'm not here to defend anybody and make people okay with any level of abuse. What I'm here to explain is how that system works, right? And how everybody kind of like operates within that system. And there are benefits to it and there are drawbacks to it, right? With record deals and stuff like that, artists have to agree to stuff. It is a negotiation. Somebody gets presented a contract. I got presented with a recording contract. I didn't like what was in the contract. I didn't sign it. I didn't sign a deal. That's the way that it works. If you sign a deal, then whatever you agree to is whatever you agree to. And the reality of the situation is artists do disassociate what they get overall from the revenue from the recording itself. So it's like you look at all of these indie artists on a road to nowhere for the most part, right? Where it's like these guys are indie, but they don't have the money to invest in themselves. They don't have the money to invest in their career. But at the same time, they're paranoid because they're feeding into the horror stories that all the other artists are talking about, where they're saying, hey, I signed this deal and all this other stuff. And they're like, well, I'm not getting no record deal. I'm going indie. But they don't have no money. So now it's just like they're in no man's land, where you got 100% ownership. You got 100% freedom of $0. What sense does that make? Meanwhile, the guy that's sitting up here complaining to you about how terrible the record deal was, the record company invested in this guy, made him a star, and he's making millions of dollars off of the stardom that the record company got him, even though he doesn't have the deal anymore. So it's like when you look at even a lot of the top indie artists had deals, and either they were shelved and then got out of those deals and went indie, or they had releases actually pushed out there and marketed and promoted and stuff like that, and then decided to go indie because they didn't like how much they made off of the records, but they had a name, So it's like, that's the thing that artists got to recognize. There is a game within a game here. It's not just the sale of the record. Brands are built on those records, and there is more money in the brands than there is in the records. Where do you think 360 deals came from? 360 deals came from the fact that you had illegal file sharing where the records weren't selling because people were downloading them illegally. But the record company's investment in artists were making them stars, and the artists were making money doing tours. They were making money selling merch. They were making money doing appearances and features and movies and all of this different type of stuff. And the record companies were like, okay, cool, well, we're investing in these artists, we're making them stars, but we're not profiting from all of the things that we're doing for them. So they started offering artists 360 deals to say, hey, we get a piece of everything because we're helping the artists build a brand that spills out into other things outside of music. Now, good or bad, right or wrong, that was what they were doing. So it's like, yo, man, a lot of times with this online stuff, man, things get real silly where people don't think from the perspective of business. They thinking from the perspective of emotion and how they feel about something, And it's like, yo, man, I move rooted in logic. You look at a deal. Is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal? What are the benefits and the drawbacks of that deal? I don't move based on somebody else's experience because we don't think the same. We don't move the same. We don't look at things the same. You know, somebody might look at a deal and be like, yo, I want 100% ownership of my music. Don't get like Master P did, but they might have a different plan. It's like what Jay-Z said, what you eat don't make me shit. You know, if you've got the resources and you've got the business acumen and you've got the setup to make something happen, then yeah, you can say, you know what? Don't give me no money. All I need is you guys to help me get distribution, right? Put me in the stores that I need to be put in, help me get on radio, and I'll handle the rest. But if you're not in that position, you're a fool if you do that. You know? Word, yo. But yeah, man, that's my take on it. That's my take on it. At the end of the day, it's like there's benefits to these record deals. And right now, what we have is a setup of you have digital distributors. You have all these other industries that are popping up that are like parasites on that market. Marketers, companies that are offering artists advances, all sorts of stuff that's coming up today, targeting independent artists. And they need for artists to value being independent, because that's where their money comes from. If artists are running around signing recording deals, then how much money are digital distributors making? A label puts your music in stores, and so it's a certain way that they need people to think in order for them to make money. And a lot of times artists fall into the trap, So you look at all of these different artists that have songs blow up, like everybody with a hit record ends up signing a recording deal. That should tell you something, So it's like Lil Nas X, he released that song on a Muse. That record blew up. Lil Nas X did not stay independent. He signed the recording deal. That guy that had that song blow up on TikTok, right? Give my little boo thing. I could tell with a 2K girl I know. That song, that guy ended up signing a recording deal. Every artist that had a hit record ended up signing a recording deal, a record deal, right? There's a reason for that. There's a reason why an artist like Taylor Swift didn't go independent, or an artist like Drake didn't go independent. And when artists do go independent that are at that level, it's usually the result of them kind of like being like, okay, I'm burnt in the industry. People don't want to deal with me. People don't want to work with me, and I have to go indie. There's a reason for that. Word, yo. And me, hey, I have an unpopular opinion, and I'm okay with that. But yeah, I'm a realist. Word. And that's what it is. For real. It's like, yo, there's benefits to it. There's drawbacks to it. Everything is not going to automatically be great for everybody. So it's like for artists, the thing to do is be open to the idea, right? Because it can benefit you in a number of ways. So it's about negotiating power and making sure that if somebody comes to you with an offer, you have the ability to get the kind of deal that you want, where you could say, no, I want ownership of my masters like Rihanna did, and the record company will be like, okay, cool, deal. Because we know that we can make money off of you, and we see a great partnership, right, based on your current performance and stuff like that. So if an artist is new and they have no leverage, then you're walking into a situation and somebody's assuming all of the risk, and they're going to want certain concessions for the risk that they're taking. And that's the same thing with like any kind of any investor you go to beyond a bank institution, they're going to want a certain amount of power. And I've dealt with that, dude. I've dealt with it working with some of these labels and some of these guys that invest in artists, right? Some of these, I call them money men. They're artists that they're not artists, but they're like either they used to be producers or something to that effect, and they go out and they find talent. You know, a lot of times it's people that are in their circle, and they'll invest in them and they'll build them up and try to get them popular enough to attract the attention of a record company, and then they'll sell them off. It's almost like a what you would call like a tech startup, you know, where they're propped up by venture capitalists until they get to a point where they make a certain amount of money, and then they either sell to a bigger company or they go public, you know, and that's how a lot of them operate. Now, when those guys come to me and they want me to market for their artists, it's like my mode of marketing for an artist is to market from the point of artist empowerment and try to empower the artist, right? Where you put the artist in a position to where they have a YouTube channel and they have subscribers to that YouTube channel, and they can make money from like super chats and members and things of that nature, right? Like they have a website and they can do stuff on their personal website and spend everything into the artist control, which does not work for people who are in that position, because what they want is for the artist to be dependent on them. So what they want is for you to basically do everything that allows the artist to be popular, but in a way that doesn't give the artist control. So it's like, hey, I am the one that's distributing your music. So it's like, from the standpoint of the relationship with the digital distributor and the streaming activity and all of that other stuff, I'm in control there. So if they hire me and I go and advertise your music to drive streams and you get a whole bunch of streams, you can't do anything with that other than be happy. You know what I'm saying? But they could take those streaming numbers and present them to a label and be like, hey, look how many streams this guy got. You know, maybe you want to work out a deal with us. And the artist isn't empowered to where if I built them up on YouTube from the standpoint of being independent, or on any platform from the standpoint of being independent, and they had access to their fans and they had control over the money and all of that other stuff, they could disassociate with the guy that put the money in them and be like, hey, you know what, I'm gonna move on. And that is something that I've seen happen too, where artists get, and we talking about a lot of money here. Somebody invests like $100,000 in an artist, and then the artist decides, yo, I don't want to deal with you no more, right? Because I've decided that I am actually into punk rock, and you want me to be hard rock, and I'm over that, and I want to go this other direction. And they'll leave. And then that person that invested money in them is just out of $100,000. You know what I'm saying? They're just out of $100,000. Word, yo. So it's like, we got to recognize that it's a two-part system, man. You know, it's businesses, it's artists. Artists aren't always the victims, you know, and record companies and these people on the investing end aren't always the villains. And sometimes the people that you think are the heroes are the villains, you know? It is a very nuanced thing. It's not a straightforward thing. It's very nuanced. Word, man. So it's like you got to kind of like see the game from all angles and look at it from the standpoint of what's going to benefit you, and make your decisions based on what's going to benefit you, and not coming in it from the standpoint of somebody else's baggage. You know, what happened to somebody else, how somebody else's deal worked out. Because listen, man, I've been around for a long time and I've seen a lot. I've heard a lot, you know, and you've had situations where artists got signed record deals where they got a whole bunch of money up front, and they took the money that the record company gave them to record their album, right? Like they got an advance, and the advance was for them to get a record recorded, right? Get an album done. And the artist took that money and went and bought fur coats, bought cars, went to the clubs, poured out the bar, partied all night long, and then at the end of the day didn't have any money to record the album, and ended up recording the album in like people's cribs in the projects, right? Like local producers, where you go in and you recording in somebody's closet or somebody's bathroom, and then presenting that to the record company. And the record company looking like, yo, what the hell is this? We gave you $20 million and you come back with like closet recorded songs. What are we to do with this? You know? Or when a record company gives the artist 10 million or a million or 500,000 or something like that, and that artist takes that money and goes and buy work, right? Goes and buys drugs because they're like, yo, I'm gonna take this 500,000 and I'm gonna take this 500,000 and I'm gonna flip it, right? And then they go and invest in narcotics and try to flip the money, get caught, and end up going to jail. And the record company is out of money. Like, this is things that really have happened. You know, these are moves that artists really have made, you know? So it's like, yo, dude, it's a thing. And if you were in a different position, right? Like if you were the investor, if you were the guy that was going out and investing in talent, and it was on you, where it's like, hey, if I give this guy $100, basically you give a whole bunch of people $100, right? And you know that 99% of them are not going to make the money back. And you know, if one of them succeeds, you have to make back the money that you lost on everybody else. Your deals towards each of those artists wouldn't look so favorable to each of those artists, because it is not, the deal really isn't about the individual artist. The deal is about the system, you know? The deal is about the system. So it's like artists could not like the system, but at the same time, it's like you look at the alternative, right? And then it's like, yo, the alternative, again, works for some artists and not for others. Word. So when I look at Jermaine Dupri's stance, I understand where he's coming from and what he means, because he's looking at it from the standpoint of, yo, you know, if you get signed to a deal, they're going to invest in you. They're going to help you get your music out there. They're going to put you in positions. They have relationships where they could get your music in a movie, get you in a movie, right? Get you featured in a TV show, work and go and get you to collaborate with popular artists to get them featuring on your songs, pay to get a popular producer to work with you, pay to get popular songwriters to work with you, get you on radio, get you on music video shows, get you on radio, do all of these different things to where even if the record deal don't sell, you have a brand and you walking away with a lot, versus going indie where you assume all of the financial burden, all of the financial risk. You're limited to whatever resources that you individually have. And if at the end of the day it doesn't work out, you have nothing, right? Your music didn't sell, you don't have no money, and you lost money from what you invested. So I get what he's saying. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, as an independent, if it does work out, then it's great, right? Because you own 100% of everything. You know, you got money coming from it. All of that money is yours. You don't really have to split it with nobody, all of these different things. It's just a matter of, okay, you know, what's the artist's capability to make it all work out? Word. But that's my 2 cents, man. As always, y'all can agree to disagree or agree, whatever the case may be. This is Gift signing off. Pay us no mind. Peace, good people. 1.